Welcome! You're probably familiar with the term playtesting, and if you weren't before, you've at least heard me use it from time to time in this course. In a lot of game design textbooks and even college courses, playtesting is one of those things that's left as an exercise to the student. You're told, playtesting is really important. You should do that. But a lot of sources that recommend playtesting don't really tell you how. So today, we're going to talk about playtesting, what it is, how it works, and how to do it properly. The first thing you need to know is that playtesting is more than just sitting down and playing your game or having someone else play it. I mean, yes, you can do that, but generally playtesting is much more effective if you do it with purpose. Playtest when you have a specific question that you need answered about your game that can be most effectively answered by having someone play it. While there are probably an infinite number of questions you could ask about a game, for the purpose of game designers, most of our questions fall into these four categories. The first one, confusingly, is usually just called playtesting. So the word playtesting can either mean a really broad category of all kinds of testing, or the specific category of testing for fun, or otherwise to see if a game meets its design goals. And yes, that can be confusing, you just have to know from context. Personally, I like to call this fun testing, but that's just a name I made up to avoid confusion. At any rate, the idea is that you're looking to see if the game is doing what it's supposed to do in terms of the player experience and the outcomes. And this is absolutely critical, especially early in the project before you build too much of the game, because if you just build everything and then you find out the game isn't fun, well, that's a lot of work that you're going to have to redo. So you want to find this out early and fix problems when it's still relatively cheap and easy to do so. The next category is called bug testing, or often called QA, which stands for quality assurance. Here, you're looking for actual errors in the implementation of the game. Usually you do a lot of this with video games, not so much with physical tabletop games, though even with tabletop you can still be looking for things like typos or errors in the rules that explain how to play. But here you're saying, okay, the game might be fun, but it also crashes when you try to walk through a wall, so you need to fix that. QA as a process usually happens throughout development, but is more important the further along that you go. Early on, the game can be a bit buggy if you're not sure exactly what you're building, but you do still need to fix as many bugs as possible before releasing a game. And if your team builds code on top of buggy code, we call that technical debt, then those bugs become harder to fix, so this is an ongoing process. Now, as the game gets to be more complete, it becomes more important to start testing for balance. Early on, balance isn't generally as much of a consideration, unless you have a balance issue that's so horrendous that it prevents further playtesting. If the only thing playtesters are telling you is how unbalanced the game is, then you probably want to address that, since it may be hiding some other more subtle issues. But other than that, if people aren't super complaining about it, you usually don't want to focus on this too much early on. And the reason is because every time the mechanics of your game change, you'll probably have to redo a bunch of content, which will throw your balance way off from where it was before anyway. So trying to perfectly balance a game early on usually ends up being kind of a waste of time, and this is something you tend to focus on later as the game nears completion. We'll talk about balance in more detail in the next module. Lastly, usability testing focuses on the UI, which we just talked about. So things like, can a player navigate the menu system of your game without getting lost? Can they remember the controls for all the game's basic actions? How easy is it for them to control the game without having to stop and try to remember what button to press? Or can they read and understand everything that's happening on the screen? This usually happens relatively late in development, along with balance testing, and for the same reason. When the mechanics change, the UI of the game also often changes to compensate. And the big takeaway I want you to remember here is that before you run a playtest at all, decide what the purpose of your test should be, because you may organize things a bit differently depending on what kinds of problems you're looking for. Also, most of the time at the start of the test, you should be letting your testers know this purpose so that they can help focus on finding the kinds of problems that will be helpful to you. Also, let them know that if there are any problems with the game that you already know about, so they can safely ignore or skip over those. Although, of course, it's better if you can just fix any known problems first, but sometimes that's not practical if you schedule testing in advance. Now, just as there are different purposes to playtest, there are also different kinds of people that you'll want to playtest with. And just like there's usually an order to playtesting, where in the early stages you're testing for fun, then later on you're testing for balance and usability, and bug testing starts early but ramps up as you progress, there's also a progression of who is playtesting. The first person who should usually playtest the game is you, yourself, and usually alone, unless there's some compelling reason not to. The main reason to playtest yourself is that playtester time is a limited and precious resource, so you want to maximize the value you get from other people. There's only so many times you'll be able to ask a given person, even a close friend, to test your game before they just can't do it anymore. So if there are really obvious problems that you can find early on, like really obvious game crashes, exploits, or confusing parts in the rules that you can find yourself, figure those out on your own and fix them first before you get other people involved, because otherwise your other playtesters are just going to find the problems that you could have found yourself instead of finding other things that you would miss. The next place you'll go for testing, when you've taken the project as far as you reasonably can on your own, and the game is still early in development at this stage and probably not even close to complete, is next thing you take it to people who are close to you. This might be close friends, family, or other designers who you know professionally. We use our circle of friends for convenience. Going out and finding people we don't know to play our games takes a lot more effort, and sometimes money or other resources to bribe them, but we can usually find some friends who'd be willing to do this for us just as a personal favor because they like us, as long as you're not being too demanding of their time and you're willing to return the favor later. Now, for friends who aren't professional game designers, their feedback is often going to be limited. They'll catch the obvious things that you missed, but you won't often get honest answers for them, because they're your friends. They want you to succeed, they want to support you, so a lot of your friends will tell you what a great game you made, even if they aren't really feeling it, because they just want to be polite and supportive. If you are lucky enough to have any friends who are the type who are willing to be honest with you and tell you what you need to hear and not what they think you want to hear, those friends are gold for playtesting, and you should treat them as a special treasure to be valued above your other friends, at least for this purpose, and maybe in life in general. Now, colleagues who are professional game designers have the benefit of often giving very high-quality feedback, and they understand design and can talk with you at a professional level, so those can also be great friends to have. Professional designers also tend to be very busy, though, so you might not be able to get a whole lot of time from them. Once you've exhausted your social network, then we tend to widen the net a bit and bring in testers we don't know, or we don't know that well. And at this point, we're starting to look for how the game will be received by a wider target audience. So ideally, a lot of these testers will be people who are part of your identified target market. Later on, you may expand this outward even further to see how people who aren't part of your core market will respond to your game. I'll also point out that if you yourself are not a member of your game's target audience, for example, if you're an adult making a game for kids, you will want to involve people from your target audience much earlier in the process than you normally would, and sometimes not even as playtesters, but even included as collaborators in the design. And the final stage of playtesting, once you've gotten to the point where you're almost ready for release, is what we call blind testing. This is where not only are you having complete strangers play the game, but you aren't even in the room. They are playing in their own space as if they had bought this game at retail and were playing on their own time. Blind testing is not happening under controlled conditions. It's on someone else's terms, and you are not even there to observe. So there's a limit to how much information you can get from this. Now, the benefit of blind testing is that it's the only time you can really see how your game will operate in the wild, but because you aren't there, the feedback you get directly from testers is going to be just whatever they tell you, so it may be missing a lot of key information you'd rather have had. So we usually only shift to blind testing when we're already pretty confident from earlier observed playtests that the game is working properly. We just need some final tests to make sure nothing is going to blow up that we haven't seen under more sterile playtest conditions. With video games, we often build automated data collection into the game so that the game is recording its play and sending the data to us. So then, in those cases, we can actually see what happened rather than just relying on unreliable secondhand playtester reports. That does take some extra coding time, though, which means less coding time spent on the actual game, so as with many things, there is a trade-off there. Now, I'd just like to lay out some basic how-to for running a playtest. First off is that when you've got a game to test, you're probably not paying your playtesters, you're asking for their time on a volunteer basis.
time is a gift, and you want to respect that by taking as little time as possible in order to get the information that you need to make your game better. And there's a few unintuitive ways this can go wrong. First off, this means that if you have to give any kind of intro to the game or an explanation of how to play or saying what you need, practice that speech ahead of time, even in a mirror to yourself, so you can get your playtesters into the game quickly without you fumbling around and wasting their time as you figure out how to explain what you need from them. Another thing is that if you reach a point in time when you've learned what you need to, you can stop the playtest early. Now, normally, if someone stops playing a game in the middle, especially if it's a multiplayer game, that's considered extremely rude. But in a playtest, this is actually the opposite. It's super respectful because you're taking extra time and returning it unused to your volunteers. Now, obviously, if they insist on continuing to play because they're having such a good time, you can let them. That's generally a very good sign that you've got something special, but you should at least give your players the option to exit early if you've already learned everything you need to. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I see novice designers make during playtesting is trying to treat a playtest as confirmation that their game is good, really wanting that confirmation, and then getting defensive if a playtester tries to point out a problem. A playtester, points out some weakness in the game, and the designer is like, "No, you are the one who is wrong. You just don't understand my genius." That's a big mistake. Now, remember, no game is perfect, not even yours. And the entire goal of playtesting, the whole point of why you're doing it, is to find problems. Be emotionally prepared for your game to blow up into a hot mess. Be emotionally prepared to face playtester criticism. Some testers are more harsh than others. But whether they're kind or mean, if your playtesters identify a problem, they are helpful to you, and they are useful, and you should be thankful to them for that. It is much better to find problems with your game during playtesting than to find them after you release your game to the public. If your playtesters tell you that everything is great and the game is fun and there are no problems, that's actually not a great thing. It meant you just wasted everyone's time and didn't learn what you needed to. Now, I just mentioned that the goal of playtesting is to find problems, but that has a couple of implications that I want to point out. The first is that the goal here is to find problems, but find problems, not to fix those problems. Something you'll see a lot in playtests is a tester making a suggestion for how to change the game. They'll say, "I think you should add this new mechanic," or "You should change this mechanic to something else," or something like that. And this is actually the hardest kind of feedback for a designer to work with, because most of the time, your playtesters are not professional game designers. But even if they are, there's probably a lot about the design goals of the game and the playtest history that you know and they don't. So when a playtester gives you a suggestion to change a game, you have to turn that instead into an identified problem, which means working backwards. Try to think of why someone might have made that suggestion. What is it about the game they're trying to fix? What's the problem they're trying to solve that they think their suggestion is the proper fix for? Once you've identified the core problem that caused them to make that suggestion in the first place, then you can identify a proper fix later, which might end up being exactly their suggestion, but most of the time it'll be something entirely different. Another common situation you'll run into during playtests is a playtester who pauses the game to ask you a question about how the game works or what the rules are or what they're supposed to do, something like that. Now, your first instinct might be to answer their question, because what else would you do when someone asks you a question about your game and you know the answer? But here's the thing. If they're asking a question, it suggests that there is a problem, that there's some way that the game is failing to communicate to the player, and you do not want to pass up the opportunity to find what that problem is. So instead, if a playtester asks you a question about how your game works, your first response should not be to answer them, it should be to ask the question back at them. If I weren't here, and you were playing this on your own, what would you guess the answer to your own question is? They might give you the correct answer, in which case you know that while something might raise a player's curiosity, at least that part of the game is intuitive and does match what the player might guess. Now, if the playtester gives the wrong answer, or they're so confused that they don't even have a guess, or if you have multiple testers that give you multiple guesses, then that suggests something about your game is clashing with the mental model of what players are expecting from your game. So, for example, if you're making a first-person shooter for PC, players are probably going to expect that the mouse moves the cursor to look around and WASD keys move your feet, because that's how most first-person games work. They built up this expectation from playing other games, so if your controls are different, your testers will probably be confused. In a situation like that, you might decide that the thing the playtesters thought that they found intuitive is actually better than what you had designed. If something is intuitive to players, it's probably because they've seen something like it in a lot of other games. They've probably seen it in a way that it works, and they've probably seen it in a way because it works well. So that should always be something you consider when you go back and revise your game. But if you do decide to keep your mechanics as they are and not adjust them, then you at least need to know that they go against player intuition. They go against what's probably going to be the player mental model. So you'll need to spend extra time teaching it to the player by highlighting that in the rules or the tutorial.
This module is in multiple parts. Thanks for watching this part, and I'll see you in the next part, where we'll learn more about this topic in this module.